This is Visions of Girlhood, a series of visual essays looking at girlhood on film. The first of this series will focus on girlhood as a coming-of-age experience, as represented in European cinema from 2001 to 2009. This essay is comprised of 4 parts: space and time, movement, cars and glass, and the girl's gaze. For this video, I will be focusing on space and time and cars and glass. But first, I'm going to discuss an experience of mine, which relates to the theme of this essay. A few summers ago, I was working a shift at a pub one late afternoon. I was cleaning and collecting glasses from each table, including one of 5 men. One of them asked me how old I was, so I told him, 18. 13, he said. No, 18, I said. Oh, well, that's all right then, he said, placing his hand on my bum. Later, when I was loading up the dishwasher with all the dirty glasses, I pondered the difference between 13 and 18. Presumably, if I'd been 13 years old, then it would not have been all right for him to touch me. However, it was apparent that, now at the legal adult age, my body was to be part of the public domain, viewed by others as something different than what I felt it to be. That is, a body that could be touched, objectified, remarked upon, and eroticised. For this paper, I've chosen 3 films that demonstrate this idea of subjectivity under objectification. The feeling that one is on the verge of womanhood, or possibly a woman already, not because you feel different, but because those in your surroundings view and treat you so. This is not so much an undergoing of a shift in power from child to adult, rather being relegated, or elevated depending on how you see it, from a position of invisibility into one that is visible but sexualized. Feminine adolescence, as Catherine Driscoll defines it, is the social process of becoming a woman. In the films of this study, we can see individuals who are socially produced, subjected to various experiences that define not only their adolescence, but their womanhood as well. These 3 films span the years from 2001 to 2009. We have Fish Tank, as directed by Andrea Arnold in Britain in 2009, Lilia Forever, directed by Lucas Moodysson in 2002, a Danish-Swedish film, and Amasseur, as directed by Catherine Breillat in 2001 in France. Studying and watching fictional experiences of girls on film is important because it affirms the girl as an autonomous subject with a perspective of her own, and it encourages us as adults to imagine living in a position that is doubly subordinated as being both child and female. Represented girlhoods also challenge and offer alternatives to the dominant modes that suggest that the default spectator is male. Here I will explore the girl's experience as she is subjected to the tyrannies of the adults that surround her, who in turn become the othered objects of her gaze. In this way, the girl's unique point of view can be used to subvert the existing hegemonies in film that are often assumed to be enduring and unbreakable. Lucy Bolton has previously explored Fish Tank, arguing that Mia's represented girlhood is an evocation of her individual personality and experiences through an immersive cinematic phenomenology of her space-time and movement. In this essay, I want to expand on Bolton's analysis of Mia's experience in comparison with Lilia and Anaïs. Both Mia and Lilia are on the cusp of womanhood at 15 years old, whereas Anaïs is visibly still a child at 13. Mia and Lilia are working class, whereas Anaïs is from a middle-class family. Although there are a range of differences between these 3 protagonists, in particular their differing nationalities, their experiences uncover global discourses of girlhood relating to moral panic. As I will explore, these girls are able to be approached, as Rentschler and Mitchell state, not as problems to be solved or subjects to be rescued, but as agents who face systematic barriers to their own agency and autonomy. We can begin to stop linking them to crisis constructions that denigrate their subjectivities and experiences. While moral panics and discourses of victimhood are often inscribed on the girl, in these films, each girl's experience of sexual abuse plays a role in her coming of age, but it does not define it. Nevertheless, as these films depict the girl's space, time and movement as becoming increasingly restricted as she ages, this has particular significations for the real lived experiences of girls and women in the 21st century. In an interview with Catherine Breillat, she said that she decided to
décidé de faire un petit film avec cette grosse petite fille qui est à la fois très sexuelle, qui a un corps interdit parce qu'elle a 13 ans.
In this case, Anaïs's carnal desires are limited by the specific point in time that she occupies as a 13-year-old prepubescent female. Lilia and Mia, on the other hand, as 15-year-olds, are, in the words of noughties girls icon Britney Spears, not a girl, not yet a woman. The experiences that they encounter, namely those involving predatory men, are due to their positions as females in a patriarchal society. The girl's body itself is not an issue, it is, as Simone de Beauvoir states, the body as situation. Ayapala et al. States that, for girls, the transition from youth to adulthood is marked by learning to read the female body as sexual and then taking responsibility for this meaning. As time progresses, we see each girl coming into enlightenment of how her body, her space and her movement is regulated by her peers. Thus the girl becomes a woman through her oppression, not because this is biologically necessary for a girl to reach adulthood, but because her society necessitates it. At the beginning of each film, the girl has a space that she can call her own and roam freely within it. This changes as she ages. Lilia reclaims her space when she carves her name into the wood of a bench, while a group of young men yell abuse at her from a balcony. Lilia refuses to move until she has finished carving Lilia Forever into the bench. Her vandalism is an act of defiance, territorially marking her space as her own, in spite of the threat that the men pose. As shown in these films, the girl has to increasingly negotiate her space in relation to men. Throughout Fish Tank, we see Mia practicing her dancing in an empty room that overlooks the estate. This is her fish tank. However, it subverts the definition of what a fish tank is, as glass that contains something for the visual pleasure of those that are outside it. In this room, Mia can watch others unseen, her gaze is invisible, and her dancing is something private. This eventually changes, and Mia becomes aware of herself as being watched, like a fish in a tank. Glass, in feminist terms, also brings to mind the metaphor of the glass ceiling, a seemingly invisible barrier to women and girls. In these films, glass manifests itself in the mirrors and windows of houses and cars as the girl becomes increasingly domesticated. We may see the girl as entering into a man's space as part of her symbolic journey to womanhood. For example, she becomes confined to the car, which appears in each film as a metaphor of and vehicle for patriarchy. The car, essentially a glass container, is both a form of escape and entrapment, which the man owns and controls by driving. All three films show the car as a metaphor for the monogamous heterosexual relationship. The heterosexual man drives, the heterosexual woman sits in the front passenger seat, and the female child sits in the back, or is unwelcome on the journey. This relates to Ayapala et al., who state that achieving female sexual maturity involves expressing heterosexuality through sexual hierarchy, wherein women are dependent on men. Perhaps this is most evident in the ending of Fish Tank, when Mia sits beside her new boyfriend as he drives them to start their new life in Wales. We see her younger sister chasing the car from the back window, symbolising Mia's journey into womanhood, leaving the girl behind. Mia's first encounter with a car in the film, however, is when Connor, her mother's new boyfriend, takes Mia and her family for a drive. We see through Mia's eyes as she watches Connor over his shoulder. Connor looks into the rearview mirror, meeting her gaze, and Mia looks away. This meeting of his male gaze is crucial because it shows Mia becoming increasingly aware of her visibility as a passenger in the back seat. Or, in other words, a girl who is yet to be inducted into a heterosexual relationship that defines her place as a woman. Mia's mother was originally reluctant to bring her two daughters on the drive. We see a similar occurrence in Amateur, when her sister, after meeting her summer romance Fernando, leaves Anais behind to walk the dirt track home. Lilia is also scorned by her mother and her mother's boyfriend, who leave her weeping in the mud as they drive off, abandoning her for America. Later on, when Lilia has a boyfriend, we see the event repeated, this time with her leaving her friend Volodya behind. It seems that in these films it is a rite of passage for the girl to enter the space of a car in her journey to womanhood. The familiar rear window shot signifying this again. The female adolescent is initially unwelcome on the heteronormative car drive until she matures, as shown when Mia, after having had sex with Connor, is promoted from the back to the front seat of his car, replacing her mother. As mentioned previously, Lilia also experiences the liberation of the front seat when she falls in love with a boy of a similar age, providing a window of solace into her world of destitution and prostitution. Her deceitful boyfriend drives her to the airport, where she is under the impression that they will start a new life together, which is eerily similar to Mia's drive with her boyfriend in the final scene of Fish Tank. Instead, Lilia is led into the clutches of a middle-aged man, who forces her into sexual slavery. Absurdly, once she is under the control of her captor, she is banished again to the back seat of his car, making it more apparent her position as a minor. The car, as a symbol for patriarchy, is particularly salient when Lilia's captor drives her to various locations to forcibly prostitute her for money. As Lilia is essentially trafficked from the Baltic states into Sweden for mass consumption by men, she becomes a metaphor for the globalized product. The irony is visible when McDonald's, an icon of globalization, is repeatedly bought for Lilia by the man who traffics her, which she consumes hungrily in her starved state. In Amateur, Brea defies convention by having the mother drive Anais and her sister home after the end of their holiday. If the car journey in Fish Tank and Lilia Forever is to be taken as representing heterosexuality and the gender hegemonies engendered by this, then by having a woman at the wheel, there is a certain sense of doom and vulnerability to be felt when the mother pulls over to rest in the middle of the night. With a swing of an axe, the glass in the car windshield shatters, as it is hacked to pieces by a strange man. Under the logic of patriarchy, the vehicle is incomplete without a man to drive it. However, choosing to have a strange male figure who represents a facet of patriarchy, that is, violence towards women by men, choosing this figure to destroy the car in this manner could be interpreted as a symbol of patriarchy being destroyed by patriarchy. A glass container destroyed by a murderous rapist. This is something I will explore further in the next essay. Until then, I'd be interested to see any other aspects of the girl on film and her perspective regarding the car and other forms of glass. Cars seem to be everywhere, from the background to an uncanny spectacle through the girl's eyes, foreshadowing the doom and splendour of womanhood.